You know what's crazy? Sometimes the people who think they're stepping on you have no idea they're about to face the most powerful force they've ever encountered. I'm talking about the kind of revenge that doesn't just hit back it completely. Rewrite someone's entire existence. What happened to Sarah Mitchell will blow your mind. This woman endured a year of pure hell from her husband's family. They called her worthless, made her work brutal construction jobs, and ultimately threw her out like garbage. But here's the thing they never saw coming. Sarah wasn't just some random woman they could destroy. She was the beloved little sister of 6 of the most powerful men in America. And when they found out what happened to her, let's just say the Mitchell family learned the lesson. They'll never forget. But before we dive into this incredible story of justice and family loyalty, hit that like button if you believe karma always finds its way back. And subscribe to Secret Before Revenge because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Sarah Mitchell stood in the pouring rain outside the construction site, her hands raw and bleeding from operating heavy machinery for 12 hours straight. At 25, she was supposed to be building a life with the man she loved. Instead, she was barely surviving. Sarah, get over here! Her mother-in-law's shrill voice cut through the noise of the excavators. Margaret Mitchell had that look. In her eyes, the one that meant trouble. Yes, Mrs. Mitchell. Farah wiped her muddy hands on her work clothes, trying to look presentable. Look at you. Filthy. Disgusting. I don't know what my son ever saw in someone like you. Margaret's lips curled with disdain. But that doesn't matter anymore. Pack your things. You're done here. Sarah's heart stopped. What do you mean? I mean, you're fired. And don't think you can run crying to Danny about it. He's the one who told me to get rid of you. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Danny, her husband of barely 8 months, had gotten her this job when they were struggling financially. He promised they'd get through the tough times together. There has to be some mistake. The only mistake was my son marrying trailer trash like you. Margaret stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You think we don't know what you really are? Some gold digger who thought she could marry into our family and live the easy life. Sarah felt tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. I love Danny. I've never asked for anything. Love? Margaret laughed harshly. Honey, love doesn't pay the bills. Love doesn't make you worthy of the Mitchell name. And love certainly doesn't make up for the embarrassment you've caused. Our family. As Sarah walked away from the construction site for the last time, she had no idea that 3 black SUVs were following her at a distance. The men inside had been searching for her for over a year, and they were about to discover exactly what had happened to their precious little sister. Sarah's hand shook as she unlocked the door to the small apartment she shared with Danny. Maybe if she explained everything, if she told him how his mother had humiliated her, he'd understand. He'd take her side like a husband should. The living room was dark, except for the glow of the TV. Danny sat in his recliner, not even looking up when she entered. Danny, we need to talk. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Yeah, we do. He finally turned toward her, and Sarah's blood went cold. There was no warmth in his eyes, no trace of the man who promised to love her forever. Sit down. Sarah perched on the edge of the couch, still in her dirty work clothes. Your mother fired me today. She said you told her to. I did. Danny's voice was flat, emotionless. The simple admission felt like a knife twisting in her chest. Why? Danny stood up and walked to the kitchen, pulling out a manila envelope from the counter. He threw it at her feet. Because I'm done pretending. With trembling fingers, Sarah opened the envelope. Divorce papers. Her name was already typed on the line, waiting for her signature. Danny, I don't understand. What did I do wrong? He laughed. But there was no humor in it. What did you do wrong? Sarah, you're everything that's wrong. You're poor, you're boring, and you're holding me back. Holding you back from what? From my real future. See, while you've been playing in the dirt, with those construction workers, I've been building something real. Something with Rebecca Hamilton. Sarah's world tilted. Rebecca Hamilton, the daughter of Hamilton Industries, one of the wealthiest families in the state. You're cheating on me. It wasn't a question. I'm upgrading. Danny's cruelty was breathtaking. Rebecca comes from money, real money. Her father wants to bring me into the business. Do you know what that means for me? For my future? What about our future? Our marriage? Our marriage was a mistake. I was young and stupid, and I thought I loved you. But love doesn't pay for the life I want to live. Sarah felt something breaking inside her chest. So you used me. You made me get that horrible job, work those brutal hours, just so you could, so I could buy time while I secured something better. And now I have. Danny sat back down, dismissing her completely. Sign the paper, Sarah. Don't make this harder than it has to be. What if I don't want to sign? Danny's eyes turned cold. Then I'll make your life so miserable you'll beg me to let you go. I know people, Sarah. People who can make sure you never work in this town again. People who can make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of woman you really are. Sarah stared at the man she'd once loved, seeing him clearly for the first time. What kind of woman am I, Danny? The kind who sleeps around construction sites. The kind who can't even keep her own husband satisfied. The kind who's so pathetic, she has to beg for scraps. Each word was designed to destroy her, and Sarah realized that was exactly the point. Danny Mitchell wanted to break her completely before he discarded her, but as she picked up the pen to sign those papers, Sarah had no idea that her 6 older brothers were less than 10 minutes away from this apartment. And when they found out what Danny Mitchell had done to their baby sister, his comfortable little world was about to explode. The signature was still wet on the divorce papers when Sarah heard the sound that would change everything multiple. Car doors slamming outside her apartment building, followed by heavy footsteps on the stairs. Danny looked up from his phone, annoyed. Are you expecting someone? Before Sarah could answer, there was a knock on the door. Not a polite knock, the kind of authoritative pounding that demanded immediate attention. Danny strode to the door and yanked it open. Listen, we don't want. Whatever you're, his words died in his throat. Standing in the hallway were 6 men who looked like they could have stepped out of a Forbes magazine cover. Tall, impeccably dressed, and radiating the kind of power that made people instinctively step back. The man in front, clearly the oldest, had steel gray eyes that could cut glass. We're looking for Sarah Brooks. Sarah Mitchell, Danny corrected automatically, then seemed to realize his mistake. I mean, it's complicated. Who's asking? Her family. The word came out like a threat. Sarah's head snapped up from where she'd been staring at the divorce papers. That voice, she recognized that voice from a lifetime ago, from memories she'd tried so hard to bury. Michael? She whispered. The man's entire demeanor changed the instant he saw her. The cold authority melted into something fierce and protective. Sarah, my God, what have they done to you? She was still in her muddy work clothes, her hands cut and bandaged, her face streaked with tears and exhaustion. She looked like she'd been through hell, because she had. You can't be here, Sarah said, panic rising in her voice. You can't. We can be anywhere we want to be. The second brother stepped forward, and Sarah recognized him too. James, 2 years younger than Michael, but just as imposing. The question is, who the hell is this guy? And why does our sister look like she's been living in a war zone? Danny had gone pale. Your sister? Sarah never mentioned having any family. Because she was protecting you, the third brother said. Sarah's heart clenched as she recognized David, the doctor. Even now, his trained eyes were cataloging every injury, every sign of exhaustion and stress on her face. Protecting me from what? Danny demanded, trying to regain some control of the situation. Michael smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. From us. The fourth brother, Thomas, stepped into the apartment without being invited. His eyes swept over the cramped space, taking in the cheap furniture, the divorce papers on the coffee table, the way Sarah was hunched over like she was trying to disappear. Sarah, he said gently, why don't you tell us what's been happening here? Nothing's happening, Danny interrupted. Sarah and I are getting divorced. It's amicable. She was just leaving. Were you leaving, Sarah? This came from the fifth brother, Robert, whose voice held the same gentle authority she remembered from her childhood. Before Sarah could answer, the sixth brother, Benjamin, the youngest but still intimidatingly tall, picked up the divorce. Papers from the coffee table. Filed today, he observed, citing irreconcilable differences. His eyes moved to Sarah's battered appearance, then to Danny's expensive clothes and confident posture. Interesting timing. Look, I don't know who you people are, Danny said, his bravado returning, but this is between Sarah and me. You need to leave. Michael's laugh was genuinely terrifying. Mr. Mitchell, isn't it? We know exactly who you are. We know about your construction company that's been failing for the past 2 years. We know about your mother's gambling debts. We know about Rebecca Hamilton and her daddy's money. Danny's face went white. How do you? We know everything. James stepped closer. What we want to know is why you thought it was acceptable to treat our sister like your personal slave. Slave? She had a job. She was contributing to our household. By working 12-hour shifts operating heavy machinery, David's voice was dangerously quiet. By coming home with injuries that should have put her in the hospital. By never having a day off for 8 months, Thomas added. By being told she was worthless every single day. Robert's calm demeanor was cracking. By being thrown away the moment you found someone with more money. Benjamin finished. Danny looked around at the 6 men surrounding him and seemed to finally grasp that he was in serious trouble. Who are you people? Michael pulled out his phone and showed Danny the screen. It was a Forbes article, The Brooks Brothers, America's most powerful family dynasty. Danny's legs actually gave out. He sat down hard on his recliner, staring at the phone in disbelief. Michael Brooks, Michael said conversationally, CEO of Brooks Industries. Net worth approximately $12 billion. James Brooks, the second brother continued. Federal judge, appointed for life. David Brooks, the third brother added. Chief of surgery at Mass General, but I also run a few medical research. Foundations. Thomas Brooks, the fourth said. I own about 30 restaurants, but my real money comes from real estate. Manhattan, mostly. Robert Brooks, the fifth brother, smiled coldly. I produce most of the movies you watch. Won a few Academy Awards. Benjamin Brooks, the youngest, finished. Tech entrepreneur. You might have heard of some of my companies. They're only worth about $5 billion. Danny's mouth opened and closed, like a fish gasping for air. And Sarah, Michael said, his voice soft but deadly, is our baby sister. The most important person in our world. The one person we would burn down everything to protect. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face again. But these were different tears. For 8 months, she'd felt alone and worthless. She'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone care about her, to have someone ready to fight for her. Why didn't you tell me? Danny whispered, staring at Sarah in shock. Because, Sarah said quietly, you never would have loved me for me. You would have loved me for them. The truth of those words hung in the air like a judgment. Michael turned his attention back to Danny. Mr. Mitchell, you have exactly one opportunity to explain to me why my sister, who gave up everything to marry you, is sitting here in work clothes, signing divorce papers, while you're planning your future with another woman. Danny opened his mouth, but no words came out. What could he possibly say that would make any of this acceptable? Let me help you, James said. You used her. You made her work a dangerous job to support your failing business while you courted a wealthy woman. Behind her back, you let your mother abuse her. And then you threw her away like garbage the moment you thought you had a better option. Is that accurate? Michael asked. Danny looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route. You don't understand. The pressure I was under. The pressure? Robert laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about pressure? Do you know what Sarah gave up to marry you? Thomas asked. Danny shook his head mutely. She gave up a trust fund worth $50 million, Benjamin said. She gave up a position at our company that would have paid her more in a year than you'll make in your entire lifetime. She gave up a life of luxury and privilege, David added, because she thought she'd found something more valuable with you. She thought she'd found love, Michael finished. Real, honest love. The kind that doesn't care about money or status or what other people think. Sarah was sobbing now, remembering everything she'd walked away from because she believed. In the fairy tale Danny had sold her. And how did you repay that sacrifice? James asked. You treated her like hired help. You worked her to the bone. You let your family humiliate her. And the second you found someone who could give you what you really wanted, money and status, you discarded her. Danny finally found his voice. I didn't know. If I'd known who she was, you would have treated her differently? Michael's question was a trap, and they all knew it. Yes, of course. So you admit that you only treat people well based on what they can do for you? Danny realized his mistake too late. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. Michael's voice was final. Mr. Mitchell, you have until tomorrow morning to be out of this apartment. My sister will be taking it over. You can't do that. This is my home. Benjamin held up his phone. Actually, as of 10 minutes ago, this building belongs to Brooks Properties. Your lease has been terminated. That's impossible. We bought it while we were standing here, Thomas said casually. Cash offer. The owner was very motivated to sell. But where am I supposed to go? That's not our problem, Robert said. Though I hear Rebecca Hamilton has a nice place. Danny's face crumpled as the reality of his situation hit him. Please, you don't understand. Rebecca's father, he was only interested in me because he thought I had potential. If he finds out about this, he already knows, James said. With a smile. I had a very interesting phone call with him about an hour ago. Apparently, he's not impressed with men who abandon their wives for money. You ruined me, Danny whispered. No, Michael said quietly. You ruined yourself. We're just making sure everyone knows who you really are. As her brothers closed ranks around her, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in 8 months. Safety. For the first time since her wedding day, she wasn't alone, but the real reckoning was just beginning. Margaret Mitchell was having the best day she'd had in months. She'd finally gotten rid of that worthless daughter-in-law. Danny was moving forward. With the Hamilton girl, and her family's financial future was looking brighter than ever. She was in her kitchen, preparing dinner and mentally planning the wedding reception that would cement the Mitchell family's rise in society, when she heard the cars pull up outside. Multiple cars. Expensive cars, judging by the sound of the engines. Margaret peeked out her window and felt her blood pressure spike. 6 black luxury vehicles were parked outside her modest home, and men in expensive suits were getting out of each one. The doorbell rang. Margaret smoothed down her hair and opened the door, putting on her most gracious smile. Maybe these were business associates of Rebecca's father, here to discuss the engagement. Good evening, Mrs. Mitchell. The man at the front was tall, distinguished, and radiated the kind of authority that made her instinctively step back. We need to have a conversation. About what? Margaret's voice came out higher than she'd intended. About how you've been treating our sister. The words hit Margaret like a slap. Your sister? Who is your sister? Sarah Brooks, the man said. And Margaret's world tilted. Sarah Mitchell? She corrected automatically. And she's not your sister. She doesn't have any family. Mrs. Mitchell, another man stepped forward, and Margaret noticed he had the same steel gray eyes as the first one. May we come in? It wasn't really a question. Margaret found herself stepping back as all 6 men walked into her living room. They were too big for the space, too powerful, too everything. There seems to be some confusion, Margaret said, trying to regain control. Sarah never mentioned having any brothers. Because she was protecting you, the first man said again. Just like she protected your son. Protecting us from what? Michael Brooks smiled, and Margaret suddenly understood why successful businessmen feared him. From the consequences of treating a Brooks family member like garbage. I don't believe. You? Margaret's voice was shaking now. Sarah is nobody. She comes from nothing. She doesn't have any money, any connections, any... Mrs. Mitchell. James interrupted. Do you know what it costs to buy a construction company? What? A failing construction company, specifically. The kind that's been hemorrhaging money for 2 years and is about 3 months away from bankruptcy. Margaret's face went pale. How do you know about? We bought it. Thomas's voice was casual, conversational. About 2 hours ago. Cash deal. That's impossible. Benjamin held up his phone, showing her a business website. Mitchell Construction is now a subsidiary of Brooks Holdings, which means your son now works for us. Actually, Robert corrected, work for us. Past tense. We terminated his employment immediately after the acquisition. Margaret sank into her armchair. You can't do this. We can do whatever we want, David said quietly. The question is, why are we doing it? Let me explain, Michael said, sitting across from Margaret like they were having a friendly chat. For 8 months, you've treated our sister like a servant. You've humiliated her, degraded her, and made her life hell. She needed to learn. She needed to learn what, exactly? James's voice cut through Margaret's protest like a blade. How to be a proper wife. How to contribute to a household. She came from nothing. She came from everything. Thomas's interruption was quiet but absolute. She gave up a $50 million trust fund to marry your son. Margaret's mouth fell open. She walked away from a life of luxury because she thought she'd found something more valuable with Danny, Robert continued. She sacrificed everything. For love, David added. And you repaid that sacrifice by treating her like dirt. But she never said, she never told us. Of course she didn't, Benjamin said. Because she wanted your son to love her for who she was, not for what she could give him. And how did that work out? Michael's question hung in the air like a challenge. Margaret looked around at the 6 men surrounding her and felt like a trapped animal. What do you want from me? An explanation, James said. I want you to explain to me why you thought it was acceptable to fire our sister from a job that was literally destroying her body. It was good for her. She needed to learn what real work was like. Mrs. Mitchell, David's voice held the clinical coldness of a surgeon delivering bad news. I've seen Sarah's medical records from the past 8 months. Did you know she's been hospitalized 3 times? Margaret's face went white. Hospitalized. Exhaustion, dehydration, and injuries from operating machinery she wasn't properly trained to use, David continued. Did you know she's lost 23 pounds? I know. Did you know she's been taking pain medication just to get through her shifts? Margaret was shaken now. She never said anything because you never asked, Thomas said. You were too busy telling her how worthless she was. I was trying to make her stronger. You were destroying her, Robert interrupted. Systematically. And deliberately. And for what? Benjamin asked. So your son could throw her away the moment he found someone with more money? Margaret looked at their faces and saw something that terrified her more than their obvious wealth and power. They genuinely loved Sarah. This wasn't about business or money or revenge. This was about family. Please, she whispered. I didn't know. If I'd known who she was, you would have treated her differently? Michael's question was the same trap he'd set for Danny. Yes, of course. So you admit that you only treat people with respect based on their social status? Margaret realized her mistake too late. That's not I mean. It's exactly what you mean, James said. Mrs. Mitchell, you've spent 8 months proving that you're the kind of person who kicks people when they're down and bows when they're up. What's going to happen to me? Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. Michael stood up and the other 5 brothers followed suit. They looked like a tribunal delivering judgment. Nothing's going to happen to you, Mrs. Mitchell, Michael said. You're going to live with the consequences of your choices. What does that mean? It means everyone in this town is going to know exactly what kind of person you are, Thomas explained. It means every charity you've ever volunteered for is going to receive a detailed report about how you treat people you consider beneath you. It means every business you frequent is going to hear about your character, Robert added. It means your church is going to learn about your Christian values, David said. And it means your neighbors are going to find out who you really are when no one important is watching. Benjamin finished. Margaret was sobbing now. Please, you're destroying my entire life. No, Michael said quietly. We're just letting people see who you've always been. As the 6 men walked toward the door, Margaret called out desperately, What about Sarah? Will she ever forgive me? Michael paused at the threshold. Mrs. Mitchell, that's not up to us. That's up to Sarah. But if I were you, I wouldn't hold my breath. The door closed behind them with a quiet click, but to Margaret Mitchell, it sounded like the end of the world. In her kitchen, the dinner she'd been preparing was burning on the stove. But that was the least of her problems. Now Sarah stood in the penthouse suite of the Brooks Tower, looking out at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. 24 hours ago, she'd been Sarah Mitchell broken and utterly alone. Now she was Sarah Brooks again, surrounded by luxury she'd forgotten existed, and brothers who would move heaven and earth to protect her. The stylist will be here in an hour, Michael said, entering the room with a cup of coffee and what looked like a legal document. But first, we need to talk. Sarah turned away from the window. She was wearing one of James's old Columbia Law sweatshirts and a pair of sweatpants that Benjamin had grabbed from his apartment. Even in borrowed clothes, standing in this beautiful space, she looked more like herself than she had in months. Talk about what? Michael sat down on the leather sofa and patted the space beside him. Sarah curled up next to her oldest brother, the way she used to when she was little and scared of thunderstorms. About what happens next, Michael said gently. I don't know what you mean. Sarah, honey, you've been through hell. What Danny and his family did to you, that's not something you just bounced back from overnight. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I forgot who I was, she said finally. For 8 months, I let them convince me that I was worthless, that I deserved to be treated like that. But you don't believe that now? I don't know what I believe anymore. Sarah's voice was small. Michael, what if they were right? What if I am just some spoiled rich girl who doesn't know how to function in the real world? Michael set down his coffee and turned to face her fully. Sarah Brooks, you are the strongest person I know. I'm not strong. I'm weak. I let them. You survived, Michael interrupted. For 8 months, you endured psychological and physical abuse that would have broken most people. You worked a job that was literally destroying your body. You were isolated from everyone who loved you, and you survived. Tears started falling down Sarah's cheeks. I wanted to call you so many times, but I was so ashamed. Ashamed of what? Of failing. Of proving that maybe I really was just a privileged princess who couldn't make it in the real world. Michael pulled his sister into a fierce hug. Listen to me very carefully. You didn't fail at anything. You were manipulated and abused by people who saw your kindness as weakness. That's not failure. That's you being a good person in a bad situation. But I should have been stronger. You were strong enough, a new voice said from the doorway. David walked in, followed by the other 4 brothers. Sarah, I want you to understand something as a medical professional. What you experienced was trauma. Systematic, deliberate psychological trauma designed to break down your sense of self-worth. The fact that you're sitting here, talking to U.S., still caring about other people, that's not weakness, James added. That's resilience. But I feel so stupid, Sarah whispered. How did I not see what Danny was doing? Because you loved him, Thomas said simply. And when you love someone, you want to believe the best about them. Even when they don't deserve it, Robert added. Especially when they don't deserve it. Benjamin finished. Sarah looked around at her brothers, these powerful, successful men who could have anything they wanted in the world, and saw nothing but love and concern in their eyes. I missed you guys so much, she said. We missed you too, baby girl, Michael said. Every single day. So what happens now? Sarah asked. Now, James said with a smile that reminded Sarah why opposing counsels feared him in court. We remind the world who Sarah Brooks really is. The stylist arrived exactly on schedule, an elegant woman named Victoria, who took one look at Sarah and immediately began sketching. Natural beauty, excellent bone structure, but she's been hiding, Victoria murmured to herself. We're not changing her, we're revealing her. 3 hours later, Sarah looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Her hair, which had been pulled back in a practical ponytail for months, now fell in soft waves around her shoulders. Her skin glowed with professional makeup that looked completely natural. The dress Victoria had chosen was simple but stunning navy blue silk that brought out her eyes and made her look both powerful and approachable. Oh my God, Benjamin said when Sarah emerged from the bedroom. Danny Mitchell is going to lose his mind. That's the point, Robert said with satisfaction. Where are we going? Sarah asked. The Hamilton Industries Charity Gala, Michael said. It's the social event of the season. All the most important people in the city will be there, including Danny and Rebecca. James added. Sarah felt a flutter of anxiety. I don't know if I'm ready to see him again. You don't have to do anything, David assured her. Just be yourself. Let people see who you really are. And what if people ask about the divorce? Then you tell them the truth, Thomas said. That sometimes people show you who they really are, and you have to decide whether that's someone you want in your life. What if I embarrass you guys? Sarah, Michael said seriously, you could never embarrass us. You're Sarah Brooks. You're our sister. You're family. And family means that no matter what happens, we've got your back. The Hamilton Industries Gala was held at the Grand Ballroom of the city's most exclusive hotel. As the Brooks family entered together, 6 powerful brothers surrounding their beautiful sister, conversations literally stopped. Sarah felt every eye in the room on her, but for the first time in months, she wasn't afraid of the attention. She was exactly where she belonged. Sarah? A voice called out across the room, and Sarah turned to see Amanda Chin, her old college roommate, approaching with wide eyes. Oh my God, is that really you? Hi, Amanda, Sarah said with a smile. I heard you got married, but then you just disappeared. Nobody knew where you went. We were all so worried. I'm fine, Sarah said. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. As Amanda walked away, clearly dying to spread the news that Sarah Brooks was back, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in 8 months: pride in herself. There they are, Robert murmured, nodding toward the far side of the room. Sarah looked over and saw Danny standing next to a blonde woman in an expensive gown. Rebecca Hamilton was everything Sarah wasn't: polished, confident, and radiating the kind of entitlement that came from never having to prove your worth to anyone. Danny looked good. Better than good, actually. His tuxedo was perfectly tailored, his hair was professionally styled, and he had the confident smile of a man who thought he'd won the lottery. Then he saw Sarah. The color drained from his face so quickly that Rebecca noticed and followed his gaze. When she saw Sarah Brooks surrounded by 6 of the most powerful men in America, her expression shifted from curiosity to calculation to alarm. Shall we go say hello? Michael asked with a predatory smile. Sarah took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked across the room like the queen she'd always been. The real confrontation was about to begin. The ballroom seemed apart, like the Red Sea, as Sarah and her brothers approached Danny and Rebecca. Conversations hushed, and Sarah could feel hundreds of pairs of eyes tracking their movement across the room. Danny looked like he was about to be sick. Rebecca, on the other hand, was studying Sarah with the calculating gaze of someone trying to assess a potential threat. Danny, Sarah said when they were close enough to speak without shouting. Her voice was calm, composed, nothing like the broken woman who had signed divorce papers just yesterday. Sarah. Danny's voice cracked slightly. You look incredible. Thank you. Sarah's smile was polite but distant. I'd like you to meet my brothers. The introductions were a masterpiece of controlled intimidation. Each brother stepped forward as Sarah said their name, and Danny's face grew paler with each handshake. And you must be Rebecca, Sarah said finally, turning to the blonde woman who had been watching this exchange with growing alarm. I am. Rebecca's voice was crisp, controlled. I've heard so much about you. I'm sure you have. Sarah's tone was pleasant, but there was steel underneath. Though I suspect the version you heard wasn't entirely accurate. Oh? Rebecca's eyebrows rose. And what would be the accurate version? That I'm the woman who gave up everything for love, only to discover that some people don't actually know what love means. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Danny flinched as if he'd been slapped. Sarah, please, he said desperately. Can we talk privately? I think we've said everything we need to say to each other. Don't you? But yesterday, when we signed the papers, I didn't know. You didn't know what, Danny? Sarah's voice remained calm, but her eyes were ice. You didn't know that I had a family who loved me. You didn't know that I was worth something. That's not what I meant, because if that's what you meant, then you're proving my point exactly. Sarah stepped closer, and her voice dropped to a whisper that only Danny and Rebecca could hear. You see, the thing about real love is that it doesn't care about money or status or what other people think. Real love sees someone's worth regardless of what they can give you. Danny's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. But you, Sarah continued, you only wanted me when you thought I could do something for you. And you only regret losing me now that you know what you threw away. Sarah, if we could just start over. Start over? Sarah's laugh was genuinely amused. Danny, you threw me away like garbage the moment you thought you found something better. You humiliated me, degraded me, and made me question my own worth for 8 months. Why on earth would I want to start over with someone who showed me so clearly who they really are? Rebecca had been listening to this exchange with growing unease, and now she stepped forward. I think there might be some misunderstanding here. Oh, there's no misunderstanding, James interrupted smoothly. Your boyfriend used our sister as free labor while he courted you behind her back. Then he divorced her to clear the path for your relationship. I'd say we all understand the situation. Perfectly. Rebecca's face went white. Danny, is this true? It's complicated. It's actually very simple, Michael said. He married Sarah when he thought she was poor and powerless. He treated her accordingly. Now he wants her back because he's discovered she's neither poor nor powerless. Is that what happened? Rebecca demanded, turning to face Danny fully. Danny looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route. The circle of Brooks brothers had subtly positioned themselves to block any retreat, and half the gala was now openly watching the drama unfold. Rebecca, you have to understand the pressure I was under. The pressure? Rebecca's voice rose. Slightly. You were married to another woman while you were pursuing me? We were getting divorced anyway, because you were cheating on her with me. Rebecca's composure finally cracked. Oh my God. Do you realize what you've done? Do you know what this looks like? Rebecca, please. It looks like I'm the other woman who helped destroy a marriage. Rebecca's voice was getting louder, and more people were turning to stare. It looks like I'm some kind of homewrecker. But you're not, Sarah said quietly, and everyone turned to look at her in surprise. You're not the villain here, Rebecca. You were lied to just as much as I was. Rebecca stared at Sarah in shock. I what? Danny told you we were already separated, didn't he? He made it sound like our marriage was over long before you came into the picture. Rebecca nodded mutely. And I'm guessing he told you that I was just some gold digger who married him for money and status? Another nod. So really, you thought. You were saving him from a bad situation. You thought you were helping him find happiness with someone who actually appreciated him. Yes, Rebecca whispered. Sarah turned back to Danny, and her voice hardened. But that's not what happened, is it, Danny? What really happened is that you used both of us. You used me to support you financially and emotionally while your business was failing. And you used Rebecca's feelings for you to secure a better financial future. That's not, isn't it? Thomas stepped forward. Let's talk about timeline, shall we? When did you first approach Rebecca Hamilton, Danny? Danny's silence was damning. Because according to our research, Benjamin continued, pulling out his phone, you started pursuing Rebecca 6 months ago, while you were still married to Sarah, while Sarah was working 12-hour days to support your household. 6 months? Rebecca's voice was horrified. You've been lying to me for 6 months? Rebecca, please let me explain. Explain what? That you're a liar and a cheat and a user? Rebecca's composure was completely gone now. That I've spent 6 months being the other woman without even knowing it? The entire ballroom had gone. Quiet now. Everyone straining to hear every word of this very public breakdown. And the worst part, Rebecca continued, her voice shaking with anger, is that you made me complicit in destroying someone's life. You made me help you hurt this woman, and I didn't even know I was doing it. She turned to Sarah, tears in her eyes. I am so sorry. I had no idea. I know, Sarah said gently. Rebecca, you're not responsible for his choices, but I'm responsible for mine. Rebecca straightened her shoulders and looked directly at Danny. We're done. Don't call me. Don't come to my office. Don't contact my family. We are finished. She started to walk away, then turned back. And Danny? When my father hears about this, and he will hear about this, you can forget about any future business with Hamilton Industries. We don't work with men who treat women like garbage. As Rebecca disappeared into the crowd, Danny stood alone, abandoned and humiliated in front of the most powerful people in the city. Well, David said conversationally, this has been illuminating. Sarah, Danny said desperately, turning back to her, please. You have to understand. I understand perfectly, Sarah replied. I understand that you're exactly who you showed me you were. I understand that you're only here begging now because you've lost everything else. And I understand that I deserve so much better than anything you could ever offer me. She looked around at her brothers, these 6 incredible men who had dropped everything to rescue her and remind her of her worth. I understand that real family doesn't abandon you when things get tough. Real love doesn't come with conditions. And real men don't throw away something precious just because they think they found something shinier. Sarah stepped closer to Danny one last time. You know what the saddest part is. If you had just loved me, really loved me, you could have had everything. You could have been part of something amazing. But you were too small, too petty, too greedy to see what was right in front of you. Sarah, please. Goodbye, Danny. Sarah's voice was final. I hope you find whatever it is you're really looking for, but you won't find it with me. As Sarah walked away with her brothers, the crowd began to whisper. But these weren't whispers of scandal or shame. These were whispers of admiration. Sarah Brooks had just handled one of the most humiliating situations imaginable with grace, dignity, and strength. I'm proud of you, Michael murmured as they left the ballroom. We all are, James added. Sarah smiled, and for the first time in 8 months, it reached her eyes. I'm proud of me too. But as they walked toward their cars, Sarah had no idea that the evening's drama was far from over. Danny Mitchell, desperate and humiliated, was about to make one final play that would force the Brooks family to show just how far they were willing to go to protect their own. 3 days after the gala, Sarah was in her new office at Brooks Industries, a corner suite with a view of the harbor that Michael had insisted she take when her assistant knocked. Miss Brooks, there's a Danny Mitchell here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent. Sarah looked up from the quarterly report she'd been reviewing. In 3 days, she'd thrown herself back into the family business with a passion that surprised even her brothers. It felt good to be useful again, to be contributing something meaningful instead of just surviving. "Send him in," she said finally. Danny entered looking like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair uncombed, and there was a desperate energy about him that made Sarah instinctively straighten in her chair. "Hello, Danny." "Sarah, thank God you agreed to see me." He rushed forward and actually tried to come around her desk, but Sarah held up a hand to stop him. "Stay where you are, please. What do you want?" "I want to apologize." "Really apologize, not just for what happened at the gala, but for everything. For the way I treated you, for the things I said, for—" "Danny, stop." Sarah's voice was calm, but firm. "I appreciate the apology, but if that's all you came here to say, you could have sent a letter." "It's not all I came to say," Danny's voice cracked. "Sarah, I've lost everything. Rebecca won't take my calls. Her father has blacklisted me from every major business in the city. The construction company is gone. My mother—" He paused, swallowing hard. "My mother has been ostracized from every social circle she's ever been part of. We're ruined." "I'm sorry to hear that," Sarah said, and she meant it. "But I don't understand what you want from me." "I want you to call off your brothers." Sarah blinked. "Excuse me?" "I know they're behind all of this. The business deals falling through, the social blacklisting, Rebecca's father suddenly deciding. I'm persona non grata. That's not coincidence. That's your family flexing their power." Sarah leaned back in her chair, studying the man she'd once thought she'd spend her life with. "And if they are, then I'm asking you to stop them. Please." "Sarah, I know I hurt you, but this punishment doesn't fit the crime. You're destroying innocent people." "Innocent people?" Sarah's voice went dangerously quiet. "Danny, who exactly do you think is innocent in this situation? My mother, for one. She's losing friends she's had for decades. Your mother spent 8 months telling me I was worthless garbage. She fired me from a job that was literally destroying my health because she thought it was funny to watch me suffer. She didn't mean. She meant every word." Sarah stood up, and Danny took an unconscious step back. "And you, Danny, you think you're innocent? I made mistakes, yes, but you used me. You manipulated me. You isolated me from my family and then convinced me that I deserve to be treated like dirt. That's not a mistake. That's systematic emotional abuse." Danny's face went white. "I never meant to hurt you. You meant every bit of it." Sarah walked around her desk, and Danny backed toward the door. "You know how I know? Because the moment you thought you had something better, you threw me away. Without a second thought. You didn't feel guilty. You didn't feel conflicted. You felt relieved. That's not true. It's completely true. The only reason you feel bad now is because your plan didn't work. Rebecca saw through you. Her father wants nothing to do with you, and you're facing the consequences of your choices. Sarah, please. I'm begging you. Call off your brothers." Sarah studied Danny's desperate face and felt ... nothing. No anger, no hurt, no satisfaction at his downfall. Just a kind of tired pity. "Danny, I want you to listen to me very carefully. My brothers didn't destroy your life. You did that all by yourself. But they're using their influence. They're using their influence to make sure people know who you really are. That's not punishment. That's justice. It's ruining me. No, it's revealing you." Sarah's voice was steady, matter of fact. "Danny, you built your entire future on lies and manipulation. Did you really think that was sustainable? I can change. Can. You?" Sarah tilted her head. "Because 3 days ago, when you found out who I really was, your first instinct wasn't to apologize for hurting me. It was to try to get me back because you realized what you'd lost financially." Danny opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. "Even now, you're not here because you're genuinely sorry for the pain you caused me. You're here because you want. And me to fix the consequences of your actions." Sarah, you haven't asked me once how I'm doing. You haven't asked if I'm okay after 8 months of psychological abuse. You haven't shown any concern for the damage you did to my self-worth, my health, or my emotional well-being. Danny stared at her, and Sarah could see the exact moment he realized she was right. All you care about is getting your life back to the way it was, which means you haven't learned anything, and you haven't changed at all. What do you want me to say? Danny's voice was getting louder, more desperate. What do you want me to do? I want you to leave, Sarah said simply. I want you to accept responsibility for your choices and stop trying to make other people fix the mess you created. And if I do that, will you call off your brothers? Sarah smiled sadly. Danny, you still don't get it? My brothers aren't following my orders. They're protecting me because they love me. And they're going to keep protecting me whether I ask them to or not. That's not fair. Fair? For the first time, Sarah's composure cracked. You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when your mother made me work 12-hour shifts operating dangerous machinery? Was it fair when you convinced me I was worthless for 8 months? Was it fair when you cheated on me and then threw me away like garbage? Danny flinched at each question. Was it fair when you made me sign divorce papers in our apartment while you planned your future with another woman? No, Danny whispered. None of it was fair. Then don't talk to me about fair, Danny. You made your choices. Now live with them. Sarah walked to her office door and opened it. Goodbye, Danny. Don't come here again. As Danny walked past her, he paused. Sarah, I did love you. Maybe not the way I should have, but I did love you. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. No, Danny, you loved the idea of me. You loved having someone who would sacrifice everything for you, without asking for anything in return. But you never loved me, the real me. Because if you had, you never could have treated me the way you did. After Danny left, Sarah sat back down at her desk and stared out at the harbor. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Security says Danny Mitchell was here. Are you okay? Sarah smiled and typed back. I'm perfect. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And for the first time in 8 months, that was completely true. Sarah Brooks stood in the bridal suite of the Grand Cathedral, looking at herself in the full-length mirror. The wedding dress was exquisite French lace with pearl buttons, a cathedral train that seemed to go on forever, and a veil that had belonged to her adoptive mother. But this wasn't her wedding day. You look absolutely stunning, Rebecca Hamilton said from behind her. Adjusting the train of the dress dot in a twist that no one could have predicted, Sarah and Rebecca had become genuine friends over the past 6 months. What had started as a shared experience of being manipulated by the same man had evolved into a real friendship based on mutual respect and understanding. I still can't believe you're doing this, Sarah said, turning to face Rebecca. Are you kidding? This is the least I can do. Rebecca smiled. Besides, someone should get use out of this gorgeous dress, and it's not going to be me anytime soon. Today was Rebecca's younger sister Emma's wedding day, and when Emma's original dress had been destroyed in a flood at the bridal shop, Sarah had immediately offered her own dress, the one she'd never gotten to wear. Emma is going to be so grateful, Sarah said. Emma is going to be speechless, Rebecca corrected. This dress is worth more than her car, Sarah laughed. Money isn't everything, Rebecca. You taught me that. It was true. Rebecca Hamilton, despite growing up with every privilege imaginable, had shown Sarah what real integrity looked like. When she discovered the truth about Danny's manipulation, she hadn't just walked away. She'd made sure everyone in their social circle knew exactly what kind of man he was. Speaking of money, Rebecca said with a mischievous smile, have you seen the latest headlines about your ex-husband? Sarah shook her head. She'd made it a point not to follow Danny's continuing downfall. It felt healthier to focus on moving forward rather than looking back. He's working at a car dealership in Pittsburgh. Apparently, he had to leave the city, entirely because no one here would hire him. That's actually kind of sad, Sarah said, and she meant it. You're too good, Sarah Brooks. Most people would be celebrating. Celebrating what? The fact that a human being's life fell apart? That's not something to celebrate, even if they brought it on themselves. Rebecca studied her friend's face. You really mean that, don't you? I do. Don't get me wrong, I'm not sorry that Danny is facing consequences for his actions. But I'm not going to take joy in someone else's misery. That's why you're going to make some man very happy someday, Rebecca said with a grin. Sarah blushed. Rebecca, I'm serious. You're beautiful, you're kind, you're intelligent, you're ridiculously wealthy, and you have 6 of the most powerful men in America ready to intimidate anyone who even thinks about hurting you. You're like a fairy tale princess. A fairy tale princess who got divorced after 8 months of marriage. A fairy tale princess who learned exactly what she's worth and refuses to settle for anything less. Rebecca corrected. There was a knock on the door, and Michael's voice came through. Sarah, are you ready? The photographer wants to get some shots before the ceremony. Coming, Sarah called back, then turned to Rebecca. Thank you for everything. For becoming my friend, for showing me that not everyone in your social circle is like Danny, for letting me be part of your family's celebration today. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like, Rebecca replied. When I saw how you handled everything that happened to you, how you came back from it with such grace. You inspired me to be better. The cathedral was packed with 500 of the Hamilton family's closest friends and business associates. As Sarah walked down the aisle in front of Emma, she could hear the whispers following her. That's Sarah Brooks. She's the one who. Can you believe how beautiful she looks? I heard her brothers bought her ex-husband's entire company just to fire him. Sarah kept her eyes forward and her smile genuine. She'd learned that people would always talk, but their opinions didn't define her worth. At the altar, she took her place next to the other bridesmaids and watched as Emma Hamilton married the love of her life. The ceremony was beautiful, full of real love and genuine joy, and Sarah found herself tearing up as the couple exchanged vows. Double quotes. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish till death do us part. Sarah had said those same words 8 months ago, but they'd been empty then. She'd been marrying someone who didn't understand what they meant. Emma and her new husband clearly did. During the reception, Sarah was sitting at the head table when a waiter approached with a note. From the gentleman at table 12, the waiter said. Sarah looked over at table 12 and saw a man she didn't recognize, tall, dark hair with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He raised his champagne glass slightly when she looked his way. The note was simple. I know this might be presumptuous, but would you like to dance? I promise I'm not a reporter, a business rival, or anyone with an agenda. Just someone who thinks. You look like you could use a friend. James. Sarah looked back at the man, then at the note, then at Rebecca, who was grinning like she planned this whole thing. Did you? Sarah started. I may have mentioned to my cousin James that he should ask you to dance, Rebecca said innocently. He's a good guy, Sarah. Pediatric surgeon, volunteers at free clinics. Never been married because he's been too busy saving children's lives to focus on dating. Rebecca, one dance. What's the worst that could happen? Sarah looked back at James, who was still waiting patiently for her response. He wasn't pushy or demanding. He wasn't approaching her table or making a scene. He was just waiting. Sarah wrote on the back of the note. I'd like that. Thank you for asking so respectfully. She gave it back to the waiter and watched as James read her response. His smile was genuine, warm, and completely different from the calculating expressions she'd grown used to seeing from men who wanted something from her. As she walked out onto the dance floor, Sarah caught sight of her 6 brothers at their table. Michael gave her an encouraging nod. James flashed a thumbs up. David smiled proudly. Thomas winked. Robert made a heart with his hands, and Benjamin pretended to wipe away a tear. "You have quite the cheering section," James said as he took her. "Han, they're a little overprotective," Sarah admitted. "From what I've heard, they have good reason to be." "Oh God, you know about. I know that you survived something terrible and came out stronger," James said simply. "I know that you're here celebrating your friend's happiness instead of hiding from the world. And I know that you're brave enough to dance with a stranger who might be a complete disaster on the dance floor." Sarah laughed a real, genuine laugh that came from somewhere deep inside her. "Are you a disaster on the dance floor? We're about to find out." As they swayed to the music, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in over a year, the possibility of something new. Not a rescue, not a rebound, not a way to forget the past, just the simple possibility of connection with someone who saw her as a complete person worth knowing. "Can I ask you something?" Jane said, "Sure. What's the most important thing you've learned in the past year?" Sarah thought about it. "That I don't need anyone to complete me. I was whole all along, I just forgot for a while." Jane smiled. "That's a good thing to know about yourself. What about you? What's the most important thing you've learned?" "That timing matters. I saw you at that charity gala 6 months ago and wanted to ask you to dance then, but it wouldn't have been right. You needed time to heal, to remember who you were. Tonight feels different." "It does feel different," Sarah agreed. As the song ended, James stepped back and bowed slightly. "Thank you for the dance, Sarah Brooks. Thank you for asking so nicely. Would it be too presumptuous to ask if I could call you sometime? Not for anything dramatic, maybe just coffee and a conversation between two people who might like to get to know each other better." Sarah looked into his kind eyes and made a decision based entirely on how she felt in this moment, safe, respected, and genuinely curious about this man who seemed to understand that she was more than her story. "I'd like that," she said. As James walked back to his table, Sarah felt Rebecca appear at her elbow. "So?" Rebecca asked expectantly. "So what? So are you going to see him again?" Sarah smiled, looking out at the reception full of people celebrating love and new beginnings. "Maybe. We'll see." "That's the most hopeful maybe I've ever heard." Sarah hugged her friend. "Thank you for tonight, for your friendship, for reminding me that there are still good people in the world." "There are," Rebecca said. "And you deserve all the good ones." As the evening wound down and Sarah prepared to leave with her brothers, she took one last look around the reception. 6 months ago, she'd been broken, alone, and convinced she was worthless. Tonight, she was surrounded by people who cared about her, wearing a beautiful dress to celebrate love, and looking forward to a phone call from a man who seemed to see her as exactly what she was. Sarah Brooks, whole and complete and worthy of respect. The best revenge, Sarah realized, wasn't destroying the people who'd hurt her. The best revenge was living so well that their absence from her life became a gift, rather than a loss. Dr. Sarah Brooks Wilson stood at the podium of the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, looking out at an audience of medical professionals, philanthropists, and journalists. The Brooks Family Foundation had just announced its largest grant ever, $50 million to fund pediatric trauma research. "When I was going through the darkest period of my life," Sarah said into the microphone, "I learned something important about trauma. It doesn't just happen to you, it becomes part of your story. The question is, what kind of story are you going to tell?" In the audience, her 6 brothers sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Next to them sat her husband of 6 months, Dr. James Wilson, whose research into childhood PTSD would be the primary beneficiary of the foundation's grant. "The story I chose to tell," Sarah continued, "is not one of victimhood, but of resilience. Not one of being rescued, but of remembering my own strength. Not one of revenge, but of redemption." After the presentation, as Sarah mingled with the crowd, a young journalist approached her. "Mrs. Wilson, can you comment on reports that your ex-husband has been trying to contact you since your engagement was announced?" Sarah's expression didn't change. I'm not interested in discussing the past. I'm focused on the future, on my work, my family, and finding ways to help other people heal from trauma. But don't you think the public has a right to know? The public has a right to know that childhood trauma is vastly under-researched and underfunded. Sarah interrupted smoothly. They have a right to know that with proper support and resources, children can recover from even the most severe psychological injuries. That's the story I'm here to tell. Later that evening, at the private dinner celebrating the Foundation's announcement, Michael stood up to make a toast. 2 years ago, we almost lost our sister. Not to death, but to something worse, to the belief that she wasn't worthy of love and respect. His voice was thick with emotion. But Sarah Brooks has never been someone who stays down. She reminded us all what real strength looks like. To Sarah, James added, raising his glass, who taught me that the most beautiful thing about a person isn't their perfection, but their capacity to heal and grow and help others do the same. To Sarah, the brothers echoed, followed by everyone else in the room. Sarah stood up, tears in her eyes. To family, she said, the one you're born into, the one you choose, and the one you create. To second chances and new beginnings. And to the reminder that your past doesn't define your future, your choices do. As the evening ended and Sarah and James drove home to their apartment overlooking the harbor, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Sarah, it's Danny. I saw the news about your foundation. I wanted to say congratulations and that I'm sorry for everything. I'm in therapy now and working on becoming a better person. I don't expect you to respond, but I needed you to know that you deserve so much better than how I treated you. Sarah showed the message to James, who read it and handed the phone back without comment. Are you going to respond? Yes. Sarah looked at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. No, I hope he's getting the help he needs, but that's not my responsibility anymore. No regrets? None at all. Sarah leaned against her husband's shoulder as they walked into their building. I got something so much better than revenge, James. I got my life back. Our life? James corrected with a smile. Our life, Sarah agreed. As they stood on their balcony looking out at the city lights, Sarah thought about the girl she'd been. 2 years ago, broken, ashamed, and convinced she was worthless. That girl could never have imagined this life. Meaningful work, genuine love, and the unshakable knowledge of her own worth. The best stories Sarah had learned weren't about getting even. They were about getting better, getting stronger, and getting everything you never knew you deserved.